Okay, we need to get enough of that old broke pulley off the front the way we can get to the bearing and stuff underneath. So, back with the grinder. Alright, cutting away some of that pulley exposed the clip underneath. So if I can get that out of there, I should be able to clamp onto the end here and knock the bearing and everything out. And have just the shaft to work with, I think. And to do quite a bit more grinding, but I was able to get the clip out of there. Nick the case body just a couple of spots. I'll shine them up before I put it back together. But now I think I should be able to clamp this in the vise and tap on the body and hopefully pull that shaft out of there. Now let's see what we got here. Oh, perfect. So now I can press that bearing off, and we can go ahead and put the new seal down in there because I've got the rebuild kit. First off, let's get this shaft fixed. So going by the pictures, this here is stepped up a little bit from the size of the bearing, and that's what retains this so it doesn't slide out of the pump like that. So the bearing has to come off the same direction as the pulley piece. So I guess we'll put it in the press and see if we can't shove them both off like this. $20-ton press works much better than a little power steering pump puller. Okay, see where the bearing rides there. There's the step there that retains it, and then your pulley goes out here. So now let's go back and fix up the pump. On the back side of the pump, you have this little cover that fits in there. Got pins that goes in some holes. I shoved it in a little bit with the socket. There is a ring fits in this groove, holds it in. Once I got that out, I reached through from the other side with a little punch and tapped down through the bearing. Gently push this out, and that gives us access to this O-ring here, which we'll be changing. Now I need to slide the vane assembly out to where I can take the seal out the far side. And when you do that, the stator assembly comes out. Have this housing and the O-ring there that we'll be changing. And that knocks out the end seal. Figured I was already in this far, so I went ahead and pulled out the pressure relief valve over there because it has an O-ring on it to seal up. So now I'm going to take the housing over to the parts washer and get it cleaned up. And maybe we can put this back together. New seal went in, just found a socket just slightly smaller than the outside diameter of the seal. Pressed it into the arbor press. And see the little notches there. Since it's under pressure, the original one was staked in place, so I used a punch and gave him a little whack to stake this one in. Okay, next in goes your spring down in the bottom there. Now, this piece, each side has an area that's notched for the pin to help center it up. So we need to put the O-ring on the outside, then get that pushed down in there on that alignment pin. The alignment pin is right in line with this weep hole. So I'm going to mark the back of this with a Sharpie just so I can make sure to get everything aligned as I shove it down in there. First up, I'll put the O-ring on. Okay, the pressure plate is down in there. That was just a matter of setting it on that pin and put it in the arbor press, gave it a little shove to get the O-ring down in there. Next up comes the stator. Those round holes have to be lined up with those holes there because the pins on that go all the way through and hold everything in place. So let me get the stator in there. Sorry guys, I'm not doing very good on this video. I ended up not getting the camera turned on. Basically, it was just we had the pressure plate in there. We set the stator. It had to line up with the holes. I took the pins out of this backing plate, stuck them down through the stator and into that pressure plate. Then I carefully lifted the rotor up, got it inside with the vanes in place. Then you put an O-ring down in here. I put this in the vise and squeezed it, pushed that down just enough to get the ring in there, the snap ring. So that's all back together. Sorry I didn't get it videoed right, but that happens. I get to concentrating on what I'm doing and forget about the filming. But that slides down in there. Pump turns nicely. So now we need to put the bearing and the shaft back in. The shaft with the bearing on it. All right, took this over to the arbor press, pushed the bearing onto the shaft up to that spot where it is a different size. Now I'll put a little oil in there to make sure the seal is wet. A little on the shaft here where it rides. Now you set this in there. Now what we'll do is I'm going to gently tap this bearing from the outside. That way we're not transmitting any loads through the bearing. Make sure she still turns to make sure you're engaging the splines down below. As at some point you'll hit those. Okay, we're in the splines on the rotor. Now, carefully along the edge, knock it down to where it's seated. Now we can put the clip back in. And that takes us down to the last part, which is the pressure relief valve. Goes in like that. New O-ring on there. Lube it up. Push the assembly down and screw it in. Pumps back together, turns free. Should be good. Now we're back to the original problem of the pulley. And this is a replacement C6 pulley. The same size and everything, just made out of metal, and it has the cutouts, and would you look at that? The whole reason we had to take the pulley off was to get to the bolts behind it. It'll clear with the new pulley. So we can go ahead and put the pulley on, and if we need to take the power steering pump back off later, we don't have to mess with the pulley. Much better. Okay, to put this pulley back on there, you do need an actual tool to put it on there. It's the same kind of tool. It's the same parts of the same kit that was supposed to take off the old pulley but failed to. But you can't just shove down on the shaft. You don't want to load the bearing, the bottom. You don't want to stress anything inside. So you want to just use this to pull the pulley on there. Nice and gentle. So you screw this stud down in the center. Then you set your new pulley on. Make sure your hub with the part that you can grab on is facing out. Otherwise it'll be backwards and you might never get it back off again. Okay, you have a bearing assembly Set that on there. Then you have this pusher assembly. Screw it all the way down on there. And once that's tight, you should be able to turn this, and that will shove that pulley right down onto that shaft. Okay, let's see if we can press that down on there. Maybe we'll have better luck putting one on than we did taking it off. As you can see, that didn't quite get it all the way down on there. I think it was this thing that bottomed out. Now for that last push, we'll change to a different stud here. I could have used the other end, threaded that in the other direction, but it just didn't go into the pulley very far. Or it didn't go into the screw into the shaft very far, and I didn't want to rip the threads out of the shaft. Since it was getting a little hard to hold over there, we'll put it back in the vise. Somehow, I managed to press it a little too far. So now I got to pull it back out a little. So now you get to see how to pull it a little bit. Got a little pusher rod, drops down in there. Then you have this assembly that grabs on to that lip there. This drops down over that. This sandwiches both that puller piece and that lip. And you put that over the top. You turn it like that. And that pulls the whole assembly up. You got her back in the vise. And there we are. She is flush with the pulley. So that'll keep everything in line. One thing I hate about these press-on pulleys is because I worked on Japanese stuff, and you know how their pulleys go on? The shaft and the pulley are splined. You slip it on there and you put a nut on the end and you're good to go. This, on the other hand, sucks. All right. Should be good to put this on. That pulley has a wider profile than the balancer pulley, and it makes it look a little weird. Looks like it needs to go in a little further depending on how you look at it. But I know I can move it in a little further if I need to. I'll wait and see what it looks like with the whole belt assembly on it. But that is definitely the way to go. If you need to do anything with your power steering pump, have a C6 pulley ready to go. Get rid of that plastic one, put this on, you won't have to pull it back off again. Because you can get to the bolts, you can just take it off, piece of cake. While that was a pain in the butt, I like it much better the way it is now. All right, I did a bit more measurement, and the pulley didn't look straight with the rest of it. So I would suggest on these C6 pulleys, just running it all the way in. There's a collar on the back, and I think it butted up against the bearing where it finally stopped. So that leaves the shaft sticking out a little on the front. So yeah, just run it until it stops is where I'm going to leave it. All right, progress is being made. Got the belts on, got the alternator back on. Head and got the reservoir put on for the power steering, new hose. Feeding the pump, new hose coming back. It definitely does look like the belt is aligned better with that pulley set back a little further on the power steering. Looks pretty straight now, so it's like I said a second ago, just take it back as far as it'll go. I think it's bottoming out against the bearing. Not taking a lot of videos doing this stuff because it's pretty easy, just belts, bolting stuff back on, and it's basically the opposite of just taking it off. Plus, trying to get this thing done. Okay, definitely been making some progress. Getting some of the wiring put back in. Got the intake put back on. Didn't bother videoing that because I have a couple other videos, like when I had that valve issue where we put the intake on. That's all in there. Over on this side, the air conditioner line had some heat wrap on it, and that stuff was rotten and falling off, so I put some header wrap on it. Need to get the header down in this side especially, because all that wiring has got to go down around it. So I'll figure out the best way of routing that and try to heat protect it as best as possible. So right now we're going to get the header in there. Okay, I think I've got everything tucked back in there nicely. After setting the header in there, I remembered everything had to go right back into this corner there. Managed to wrap the small wires in this heat wrap. Tuck the battery cables behind that, so everything should be good. I'm ready to slip the header back in there for good.